I thought you couldn't graduate from Valley City State until you'd walked across the top of the
Good morning. Are we ready? Roll call vote, please. I'm sorry, roll call.
Geltoff. Bigwood.
Here.
Bonsack.
Here.
Carlsrud.
Here.
Erdman.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here.
Nielsen.
Here.
Schmaltz.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
Meehan. Ken.
Here.
And do we have any associate members on the line today, like Carol or Richard Johnson or the mayor from Wapaton? I noticed he was on last.
Steve Dale, Mayor in Wapaton's here.
Okay, thank you.
Good, Steve. I think you're cresting today, so we'll get cresting next week or something, right?
I think it was yesterday morning about 2:15.
Thank you for the precise call. Barry, do I have any introductions today? Good, okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make it.
I'll move. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the January 25th, 2022 meeting?
Also move. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Genvi, and I got you down for an officer report, and it looks like you're nice and warm wherever you are. And what do you have to tell us today?
I'm going to forego the office report until next time, Mayor. I appreciate it, though.
We're thinking next time in the water topics, instead of Mary, we'll have you present so you can feel the wrath of some people at times.
I look forward because I've hardly had any wrath lately.
Technical Advisory Committee, Al Grasser, you got some stuff to tell us? Pipe staying the same price, you say? So.
Yeah, well, we'll see where that all ends up. But yes, Mr. Chairman, I do have a report on the committee meeting that was held on March 8th. That was a video conference meeting. This one will take a little longer than normal. We covered a lot of ground at the last meeting. First item on our agenda at that time was construction update. So we did get an update on the Missouri River Intake contracts 1 and 2, transmission pipeline, contract 5A, and the Cheyenne outfall. I won't go over any of that because I see that's also on the board agenda for today. The next item that we talked about at the committee was, if you remember, in January, we looked at the idea of upsizing some pipes to provide additional capacity. And in that January meeting, we brainstormed a couple of things that we wanted the consultant to take a look at. And so they reported back in our March meeting, particularly on one of the ideas was put an extra set of brake tanks in the pipeline, which would just potentially help the hydraulic efficiencies. And Black and Beach went through that, Mr. Ronenkamp. And bottom line on that one is really there were no significant cost savings when you look at the cost of building the brake tanks versus putting some money into pipes. And it actually would introduce additional O&M costs to the process. So we didn't take any action on it. We haven't taken any actions on any of that subject, but it just is part of our technical background and analysis for any potential future considerations. The next item that we talked about, spent a fair amount of time on was potential about looking at a pre-qualification process. So what happens now is there's certain qualifications we're looking for contractors, basically experience and capacity and wherewithal, for lack of a better term, on our projects. And what happens now is that they open bids, and then they have to look at the bidders and go through basically their qualification process and try to determine their qualifications before the award. And that process essentially is time intensive. We really don't have a lot of time for the engineers to go through and do the necessary research. Sometimes that's needed. So anyway, the process is kind of compressed. And there's a sense that we could do a better job with it if we had a little bit more time. So one of the ideas that's been floated is what they call a pre-qualification process. What that is essentially is that contractors, they have to submit their names and qualifications before they're allowed to submit a bid. And so that's why it's called pre-qualifications, because you do that ahead of the bidding process. That way you know that of the pool of bidders, the bids that you receive, the bidders are all qualified to do the work. And there's a sense, if you do that ahead of time, you can do it in a more, formal, strategic manner. So we spent a fair amount of time talking about that, some of the pros and cons of pre-qualifications versus the process we have right now. Really, in the end, it seemed like it might not be a bad idea to give it a try. We're still a bit in an experimental stage. We're in the early stages of our, really large project, and it might not hurt to just take a look and see how the process works. One of the questions is, if we do that, what might be the unintended consequences that, we may not be considering. But at this point in time, Mr. Kovar was going to go back and do a little bit more research on the pre-qualification process. So we haven't made any decisions on it yet, but it looks like it's certainly a potential that can help, might be beneficial to the process. So, but again, we don't have any actual action items on that at this point in time. The next item that we looked at, and is the only thing that we actually took action on at the committee, was change orders. There's, I think the board has heard about some of this before. There was some corrective action that needed to be taken on the floor of the wet well on the Missouri River intake. And make a long story short, we've got two contractors out there. The contractor, the second contractor is going to do some of the repair work on that needs to be done, and the cost of funding that will come out of the other contractors. So to us as an organization, it's really a no net change. However, technically, we are approving change order number 2 with ICS in the amount of $209,192.25. I'm sorry, that's with Michael's Corporation. So again, that's the only action item that I should correct that. I guess the actual motion was that we're also decreasing the contract amount by the same amount with ICS. I think that will be on your agenda for today also. The next item that we talked about was the operational planning subcommittee. As we start looking ahead towards how how the actual project might operate in the future, there's a lot of moving parts relative to water quality and the players that might be involved in operating the dams. There's a whole host of things in there that are going to be operational details. And like anything, the devil of any project is in the details. So there was an idea floated that we should look at maybe having an operational subcommittee, bringing those people in that have specific operational expertise. So which isn't necessarily the same makeup as the people that are on the technical advisory committee. Myself, for example, I don't run a water treatment plant, so I don't know all the ins and outs of what water quality may or may not do to me, for instance. So those are the folks that we're looking at. We did when we talked at the March 8th meeting, we do have a draft subcommittee roster. And we actually went ahead and appointed, as best as we have the authority to do, a chairperson and a vice chair so that the subcommittee can get together and actually start, final election of their officers, so to speak, and organize themselves. So at this point in time, we have Dan Portlock, utility engineer, City of Fargo, will be the chair, and Melanie Harvey is Waterworks Director of Grand Forks, which would be the vice chair. And we do recognize that the concept of the subcommittee should be formally approved by both Lake Agassiz Water Authority and the Garrison Diversion, so Conservancy District. So I think that is also on your agenda today for an action item. With that, I might hit pause for just a second if there's any questions on anything I've gone over so far.
Any questions? I think we have that subcommittee on tab S. Is that right, Al? I think I see it in my booklet.
Yep, I think it was in there. I'm just checking the tab. Yep, that's the action item.
Mary, would be our action item. Do we vote on that now or later?
Yeah, if Al is done, we could do a vote on it.
Okay. Al, anything else?
I'm not quite done.
You are talky today. Okay, I'll let
I
you keep
am.
going.
Usually I'm pretty brief.
Yes, you are.
So we did go through the operational planning. Steve Burian Associates had a really nice PowerPoint walk through a lot of the research and things that he's done. Again, looking at all of the different components that has to come into making an operation successful. And I know as we went through that, and I'm looking at all of the components. It really reinforced to me, I think, that doing an operational subcommittee really is a good idea, because there's a lot of things to consider and a lot of technical components to that I think we're gonna get the right group of people in there to help provide some guidance on that. So anyway, we went through a lot of the operational planning. I won't get into any more detail on things than that. The other thing, just real quick, we did do a quick, just updated us on the program budget and an update basically on the program schedule. Again, you'll have all of that on your board meeting today. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. So action item is there a motion to approve the subcommittee that will look on operational issues? And my good friend Mayor Carlsrud has volunteered to do that, I see, so I'm pleased to see that. But this should help us figure out all the technicalities of who gets the water when.
I was a selected volunteer, is that what you're saying?
I know you volunteered.
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second? Any discussion, questions? Just as a timetable, Al, when this operational committee meets, will they eventually bring something back to us at 6 months or 8 months?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's one of the things. I didn't really talk about it, but I think we do need to talk just kind of internally, mechanically. How do you want your reports delivered? How do we do some of that? My first thought is that we would actually have the subcommittee chair do the reports directly, potentially back to the board. If you look down the road far enough, this is many years out, but I think eventually the technical advisory committee will essentially be replaced by what is now the subcommittee, because there shouldn't be much need for some of the technical components that the committee is doing now, but operations will be there forever. So that is my general thought, and we could, if anybody has a differing thought, that's certainly open for discussion. But I'm not exactly sure when the subcommittee would have something to deliver, but I think once we get all organized, they're going to start moving.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Bigwood,
Aye.
Bonsack,
Yes.
Carlsrud,
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Nielsen,
Yes.
Schmaltz,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Very good. Red River Valley Water Supply Project update, the work plan update, Paul Borisma is going to give that report, I think. Or is it you, Mary?
No, Paul has a couple slides, so I.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will walk through just a few slides. Kip could not make it today, so he asked me to give a short engineering and construction update, which I will do. From a engineering perspective, probably the most significant thing that's happening right now is we are kicking off next week, Thursday, the pre-construction meeting for the pipeline construction of Contract 5B. This is about a $45 million project. It will be constructed by Garney, the same contractor that constructed pipeline segment 5A. So really kind of a continuation of contractor services. But this will be to date the largest project that we have done with Red River Valley, and we are excited about kicking this one off. In parallel with that construction kickoff, there is ongoing design work. Just to kind of refresh people's memory, segment 5B kind of works a little bit to the east of Carrington, and then segments 5C, 5D, and segment 6 continue further to the east. And we are working through the final design drawings for segments 5C, 5D, and 6. So when money becomes available, likely next biennium to bid these projects, they will be ready to bid. So most of our engineering efforts right now are on the pipeline design segments. There's also some ongoing engineering effort with operations planning. Al has spoken to some of that, and I think Steve Burrian's going to speak to more of that later in the agenda, so I will not cover a lot of that. If we could go to the next slide, please. There's a certain amount of construction work that is going on. The discharge structure is near complete. Some final metal work was done recently on the discharge structure. This is where the pipeline discharges into the Cheyenne River. The only work that's really remaining is final grading, which will happen once the site dries out a little bit, and then we'll be able to complete and close out that construction contract. I did not list it on here. There's not a lot of work going on with phase 5A on the pipeline, the first mile and a half that was built. But once the site dries out, there's a fair amount of restoration that will happen. And that will likely, I think, probably be a month down the road before site conditions allow kind of final restoration of that site to occur. The actual pipeline is all in the ground. And then finally, the most active work is the intake construction work. Honestly, the intake has been a challenging project for the contractor. It's going slower than expected. They've resumed some of their work and are making better progress, but the last month has been a pretty slow work for them. I think it will likely be this summer when the tunnel gets bored. I think, as people know, the tunnel boring machine is on site. Many of you may have seen pictures of that. But it will probably be this summer before they are able to actually start the tunnel boring. If we could go to the next slide right now. Here's really a picture showing what the active work is, and you can see the big clamshell that they have, and they are lowering that down into the cofferdam, and they are mucking out the soil in the cofferdam. They have about maybe another 10 or 12 feet to go, and they will be down to the elevation that they need to be to pour the slab at the bottom of the cofferdam. So, as I said, the last few weeks have been challenging for them. Hopefully they've worked through the problems that they've had. In the last couple of days, they've been making some reasonable progress again with their excavation of the soil within the cofferdam. that's all I had for a engineering and construction update. Would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Mary, you're up for program schedule C.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just see, the tab number is going to be tab U. And that is our schedule. Paul pretty much already covered the schedule because it is about the construction updates. So it's really in there for your information that most of our early out projects, like Paul had said, is already under substantially complete, just looking to finish up the stuff. The screen tunnel structure, contract 2 at the Missouri River, and the pipeline contract 5B is what we are focusing on right now. So I don't really have a lot there, except for it's in there for your information.
So let's go to your planning level budget, V. tab
Sure.
E.
If you'd go to tab V, that's the planning level budget for the project. This is as of the end of February. And we kind of break it down into a few different categories. The yellow up top are the efforts that have been started and pretty much completed. So we have 28.7 million that's been started and completed. In the blue are items that we're working on and almost finished up with at 80%. Our current estimate of 2,032,000. We've expended 1.6 million on that. And in the green, I would say, is our current efforts that we're doing on engineering land acquisitions. And we have a $14.9 million budget on that, and we've expended 2.7 million, have 12.2 million left. Down in the orange are all of our construction projects. So we have added to this the intake, screen structure, and tunnel, and contract 5B that they will be starting on very soon. So overall, for all of our construction projects, we're at about 20% complete, including the construction phase services and some contingencies. It's 93.3 million in ongoing efforts. We've expended 18.9 million. Have 74.4 million left. So overall, for our entire program budget, we've expended 37% of the budget, a total of $139 million budget. We have expended 51.9 million and have 87 million outstanding and committed.
Very good. John Shockley, you're going to talk to us a little bit about credit agreement, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Before the board, you have a draft credit agreement. And so just, I'll briefly cover the background of this.
That's the BND sheet that the members have.
Along with the actual agreement itself. As the board will recall, the state of North Dakota is funding this biennium about 75% of the project. The cities of Grand Forks and Fargo, Lawa, and the Garrison Diversion had entered into a Series C interim financing agreement. As part of that financing agreement, it was contemplated that the local share would be funded through a Bank of North Dakota loan. Garrison Diversion was successful in coordinating with Bank of North Dakota to secure a loan of about 18 million and some change. Interest rate is 2% for a term of 40 years, so very favorable terms. The credit agreement I've been working on with bond counsel for Garrison Diversion, along with bond counsel for the Bank of North Dakota. And essentially what this is it's serving as a backstop for Garrison Diversion, City of Fargo, City of Grand Forks, that during the interim between the Series C and the finalization of the PPA, that these entities are essentially guaranteeing the payment of that Bank of North Dakota loan. It's contemplated that the revenue generated under the PPA would be pledged to the overall financing of the project, but we haven't finalized the PPA yet, so can't do that. So this is sort of an interim bridge solution to the local funding option. The credit agreement is really what I would call the nuts and bolts of the interim Series C agreement, which was already previously approved. And I've been in coordination with the city administrator for Grand Forks and for Fargo, and it's going to be on the Grand Forks and City of Fargo agendas in April for approval. Can answer any questions, but pretty straightforward.
Mr. Grubb, you're happy with the terms?
I was just going to mention, in an earlier draft form, I thought I saw an exhibit that showed the annual debt service over the term of this loan for Fargo, Grand Forks, and Garrison, who's covering the non-Fargo and Grand Forks portions of this. Will that be in the final? So I knew what I was committing to. It was kind of nice.
Very good. Any questions about this? I like the rate you got, John. Thank you very much. Mary, did that take any work to get 2%? I heard Dwayne was trying to add a house payment on there too. Do I have a motion to approve?
Also move.
Mark? Second. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Eltoff. Pigwood.
Aye.
Bonsack.
Yes.
Carlsrud.
Yes.
Erdman.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes.
Nielsen.
Yes.
Schmaltz.
Yes.
Schmidt.
Yes.
Lean.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
All good? Tammy Norgard, you're going to tell us how this continuing case with Missouri is going.
Well, the Missouri finished their briefing. Our briefing was due, I think, the beginning of March. The Department of Justice attorney handling the appeals said, I think I need some more time. So we got an extension of our briefing. It's due April 4th, and so it keeps marching along.
But I thought the feds had all their arguments ready. What do they do? Just have to redigest what Missouri says?
Sorry?
I thought the federal side already had the arguments in, is to, when they want a continuance, is that to respond to Missouri?
So, yeah, it's the DOJ's response to Missouri's brief. And the issue was the attorney handling it had spring break, had some family obligations, and he said, I was trying to get it done, and he had a trial, and he just said he didn't have time to get it done before all these things hit, so he asked for an extension, and we just went along with it and agreed.
Oh, so there's no issue on the case as well?
No,
It's just
no new issues, just a matter of time allocation, I think.
Okay. Mary, we'll go on to financial report. Budget analysis, tab X.
Sure. If you please turn to tab X in your books, this is Lake Agassiz budget analysis for 2022, our approved budget and our actuals. So the approved income budget for the year was 1.5 million. We have actually received 568,000, leaving a balance to receive yet of 965,000. For expenses, the expenses approved for the year are 1.6 million. Actual expenses of 383,000, leaving a balance of expenses yet for 1.2 million. So if you look at the beginning bank balance for Lake Agassiz starting on January 1st, started the year with 576,000. Total income received of 568,000, meaning that there was 1.1 million available. And total expenses of 383,000, leaving a ending bank balance on February 28th of $761,000. And then, as always, we list all of the expenses that we have paid and the checks written.
So you need a motion just to approve?
Yes, please.
Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Keith. Is there a second? Second. Good. Moved and seconded. Any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Eltoff. Pigwood.
Aye.
Bonsack.
Yes.
Carlsrud.
Yes.
Erdman.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes.
Nielsen.
Yes.
Schmaltz.
Yes.
Schmidt.
Yes.
Lean.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
You have a tab of membership dues paid, tab Z. Mary, or we have what Steve Burring's going to report now, outreach. You and him going to talk about that? user outreach?
Mike.
We gave you a mic, so now you can actually speak.
So in terms of user outreach in the past, we were very active in meeting with the various users, and I would report to you when we came on the most recent outreaches that we had and then those that we had anticipated coming up. We have essentially in early 2022 taken a pause on user outreach. And the reason for that is the project team is very busy doing a variety of things. And so you've heard this morning about the project, or you're going to hear in a minute about the project participation agreement. And I've been warned not to steal John and Tammy's thunder, so I won't talk about that, but there's a lot of important elements to that. And then Al mentioned how there's operation planning going on, and operations planning is starting to really turn over a lot of stones on the project and show some important elements of it. And then the Mary and the East West Nexus team is working very hard on updated cost and financial analysis. So Black and Veatch will be providing updated capital costs. They'll be providing updated operation and maintenance costs. And then all of those costs have to be put into the various categories and into the various costs. And so rather than going out with the users when all that information is in flux, we've taken a little bit of a pause. The overall goal for user outreach, however, is to try to get as many signatures as we can on the project participation agreement by year end. And so we do envision at least a couple rounds of meetings with the users coming up. And I think the target date for the PPA will be described in the next presentation. And then shortly thereafter, we'll start those user outreach meetings again.
Very good. Mary, anything else?
No, thank you. Steve covered it very well.
Good. We have project participation agreements. We've got two attorneys now on this one, Tammy and John. Who's first?
I can start. So the project participation agreement is like, I think 66 pages as of right now. And remarkably, when we sent you guys the agreement, there was some red lines that came back from Onstead Twitchell, and we sat down with Katie and John, and Steve sat in to explain some of the operational elements and walked out of the room with basically, I think, a tacit agreement on most of it. We've identified there's 4 issues that have been highlighted for conversation between your leadership and the Garrison leadership. And I don't know if you want to hear about those 4 issues. They're pretty quick and easy to address. I can just hit the high points. One is that, we're in the agreement. It says nobody can control the Corps. The Corps operates Bald Hill Dam for multiple purposes. And there's going to be a chance that at some point project water is just going to be released and flushed through the dam and going to have to be refilled. And so it says in there that the participants in Lake Agassiz will hold Garrison harmless for how we manage that, because we don't really have a lot of control over the Corps. So that's an issue that's just up for discussion if there's any changes needed in the language. The next one indicates that's highlighted is if participants request water, if somebody makes a call for water and the water is released from the dam, or if it's on the main transmission line, if the system is, ratcheted up in operations to deliver that water, regardless of whether the entity actually takes the water or not, you essentially get charged for that, or it gets deducted from your nominations. And so that's flagged for follow-up just for discussion. The next one is if there's a temporary reduction in operations or an emergency and the system shuts down, participants in Lake Agassiz still have to make their regular contract payments. That's been highlighted for discussions. And then the last thing that's been highlighted is the termination by mutual agreement. It says that we can terminate this by mutual agreement, but the participants still are on the hook for all of the financial commitments they've made in the agreement, even if the agreement is terminated, or it can't be terminated until all the payments that have been obligated have been made. So those are the 4 issues that have been flagged for follow-up between your leadership and the Garrison leadership. We, like Steve said, I think we have this target date of May 1st that we want to get the project participation agreement agreed to, and I've set that time frame out there that I want it by May 1st. And I think that we have the meeting actually May 5th due to some scheduling, so close. And then the one thing though I will say is this agreement from a legal perspective, I think is pretty clean cut and we're all good with it. But where I think you are going to have to understand things, and people like on Al Grasser's group are going to really have to understand the operational plan, which will be an exhibit to this. And that's not done yet. So that's something that they have in process, and that's going to be released by May 1st. And so that's where I think it's going to be really important for you all as users to understand how the system operates, when you call for water, when it gets released, who's got priority. Those kind of things are just going to be important for you guys to individually understand. But that's something that's going to be rolling out sometime in the next 6 weeks, perhaps. Thanks.
John?
Yeah, just echo what, everything that Tammy had said and really emphasize. I think it's important from the end user standpoint to really participate in that discussion about the operations plan. From the legal perspective, I think we're pretty solid on the agreement. It's just the overall operations plan. I don't have the technical background to really feel comfortable that everybody's interests are being adequately addressed. And then kind of the other big point is the legislative cost share issues, which are sort of out of the legal side's control. And so that would be the other major issue for the end user to talk about.
Any questions? Very good. Any new business, Mary?
No, I don't have any new business. One thing that I didn't put on there is the AUP for the agreed upon procedures. The Ide Bailey was at our office last week doing Garrison's audit, so they are working on the AUP as well. So hopefully we have something at the next meeting to present.
So a couple of things came out of the water meeting this week in the sense of discussions that the board should know about. And one is what is the cost now, or what are the inflationary costs, or what's going to go on? And initially there was talk that, yeah, we want one firm price and you guys can't change it, which we know in water projects, typically over time, inflation and other items do get into that. So we are doing another relook at our cost of what the total cost of the project is. And then what Mary found out, as I used to be, is that when the diversion was the biggest item in the state of North Dakota, you became kind of the dog everybody looked at, and if you wanted to take a little piece, you took a little piece, or you moved it forward or did what you had to do. Now that strategy with John was that they finally got one firm price, and that's what they said, we'll give you this, don't come back for any more. I think this project is a little bit more unpredictable that way, is that I don't think we can give one firm price and not expect no inflation or anything else to happen. And it also has to do with speed of build. If you do a 10-year project, 6-year project, 4-year project, that all changes the price and what happens. And Dave, to your point, if we do NWAS come off the canal, that's different pricing as well. So we have some variables that we're in front of them about that we have to be cautious about. And so I do need some help from the members a little bit, just to start pushing a little bit the importance of the project and try to get some members to understand what it is, why the NWAS might save us $200 million. We might look at that. What might helpful is if we build faster than slower. And so I think we will have to have discussions with different people, you know, in legislative bodies, or where they sit and how they sit on this. But there seems to be a little bit of this dynamic of, well, we gave you money for the diversion, so you people on the eastern part of the state, you're taken care of, and you shouldn't, you know, don't come back to us for a couple of years, let it all settle out. And I think we're going to be a little dependent on weather. So if we start having drought more consistently in the summertime, I think pressure for this project will be natural as the people will begin to push it. But I also think from our perspective as a board, we have to push a little bit of common sense. This thing needs to be done sometime, and the longer you delay, the more it's going to cost. And don't blame it on us if we, you know, if we said, hey, we think you got to build it. They said, well, delay 5 years and then your costs go up. Well, that's a partial what's going on. We did bid a project in the city of Fargo, and we're unable to award it because it came in at 42% over the engineer's bid. There were some other dynamics of that particular bid, but that in some of our CIP, we recognize a lot of contractors are busy right now, and a lot of business out there. Not a bad thing. The state's doing well. A lot of people are busy, and we got a lot of jobs out there. But just want the board to be kind of aware that we need to be a little cognitive that now we're the one that's probably asking for most of the money for one project. I need to kind of get them back to that. This is 48% of the state or 49% of the state that we're advocating for. And Grand Forks is running into it with their plant, their corn plant, when it's double the amount of water they need. And if you can't guarantee that every year, you got a huge plant that's functioning but doesn't have water. So that's critical. So I just wanted to remind you of that. When you get an opportunity to talk to any of your people, just educate them a bit. And Mary and Steve and the team and Dwayne is willing to come out and educate anybody that would like to be educated on this project. So that's all I have. Ken, you got anything else to add to that? Because you got a lot of books you can read out there that you can help us a little bit, history or something. Got to take your mic off, Mr. Librarian.
I actually do have it off. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, sorry. Sorry. Well, thanks, Mayor. I will get that ready for next month.
Very good. Thank you. Motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Please take a donut. There's a lot of donuts left here right now. I got to push on healthiness right now, Dave.